Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. I trust the week's gone well. I was talking to somebody this morning and saying the week goes by so fast. It's kind of spinning away like a spinning top. But then time, in my opinion, advances quicker and quicker as you get older. I keep looking back at the time when I was a little boy here at prep school, and a term seemed like an eternity. Sub-Saharan Africa, after Nigerian issuance last week, African countries have now issued $25.8 billion of hard currency Eurobonds so far in 2018, up 40% on 2017. Most, Egypt 6.3 billion, Nigeria 5.4 billion, Angola 3.5 billion. Having to pay out. Congo confirms near record number of new Ebola cases on Wednesday. 13 new cases, one of the highest daily counts since the start of the outbreak in July. It's pretty exceptional, said the Health Ministry spokeswoman. I wrote about Ebola in October 2014 when I said it's not about the absolute numbers, it's about its escape velocity. Viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics, and 13 on one day is exponential possibly. Ethiopia, the phrase "no journalists in jail" takes a while to sink in, but it is true. It's an index that brought Ethiopia's name from the second worst journalist jailer in Africa to no journalists in jail in just 7 months. Abiy Ahmed, most consequential leader in Africa since Mandela. The most serious potential offence that critics of the FCA say is it ignored money laundering. The money was paid straight from the banks to Abu Dhabi. It's a clear red flag. There is disappointment in the FCA decision based on the readings of the report by Kroll Associates. Kroll cited numerous irregularities in loans that were made to Mozambique. But bondholders have made out like bandits on this, really. This is the restructuring of the bond notes where they're getting some upside depending upon the income from gas. Interesting article worth reading, Africa Confidential. This is a photograph of Maputo from the scene that I took. Every day in Sudan's dusty capital, Khartoum, queues for cash machines fill the shaded sidewalks as anxious customers try to access their savings in banks that have imposed withdrawal limits as low as $11 per day. That's the FT's Thomas Wilson. This year, the value of the Sudanese pound has plummeted by 85% against the dollar, and inflation reached nearly 70% in September, one of the highest levels in the world. They've come under tremendous pressure, notwithstanding there's been some relaxation of the sanctions that have been imposed on them. MDC Alliance MPs refused to recognize President Mnangagwa by remaining seated while ZANU-PF MPs were standing. This was the budget yesterday. Mr. Cube cut salaries, but I don't think he produced a silver bullet. In Tanzania, bulldozer president tests donors. We as Tanzanians are not accustomed to this. Since independence, we have not seen the army on the streets like this, said the lawyer Fatma Karume. There's a climate of fear. To suggest that Magufuli's policies are populist or popular is not understanding the mood among the average person. These policies are not popular, they're authoritarian. Some countries are now facing declining population growth, they're short on manpower. I see no reason to control births in Tanzania, the president said in a speech in September, you will recall. Respect for human rights and the rule of law has been repeatedly undermined. The EU mission in the country announced last week after saying government pressure had led to the forced departure of its ambassador. What we're now seeing is a tipping point where the government has gone after so many different groups that international donors are saying enough is enough, said Nick Cheeseman, Professor of Democracy at Britain's Birmingham University. The question is whether donors are going to continue to pull out. He said Tanzania is not a country that can survive without the support, even though it has significant natural resources. Government has for years received more than $1 billion annually in foreign grants, putting it among the 5 biggest aid recipients in Africa, according to the World Bank. Such grants are expected to account for more than 8% of spending, according to this year's budget. Mahiga, the minister, dismissed pressure from aid groups as intimidation. They are using the words, "you will suffer the consequences," the minister told Reuters, declining to name the government he'd been speaking to. "If these are the consequences we are ready to suffer," he said. "We cannot kneel down and be blackmailed because they have money and we are poor. I think this is not how international behavior should be between neighbors." The world has only begun to pay attention to the situation after Magufuli weighed in on social wedge issues that typically attract media coverage. But the direction of travel in which he was taking Tanzania was clear from the start. Tanzania, in my view, does not have the balance sheet to support its current approach, and this strategy hitting a wall. South Africa raised interest rates by a quarter point yesterday. Inflation risks in the view remain elevated. However, it was a 3-3 split, and it was the governor who went for the hike. Rand strengthened 1%, strongest intraday level since August 10. Long bonds yields fell. This is an ahead of the curve move. I thoroughly agree with it. South African all shares down 13.98% this year. Dollar versus Rand. This is a 6-month chart. It was strong after that rate hike. Egyptian pound at 17.8950. Nigerian central bank is set to reach a deal with MTN. Finally, we've held meetings with the MTN group and we're at the verge, so let me feel I'm optimistic that we've reached the end of the road. Nigerian all share is down 16.37% this year to date. Bank of Kigali update from Bank Kalele. Rights issue announced uptake was 43%, with 104 million of the offered 222 million shares subscribed for, raising $31 million following the rump offer by institutional investors who oversubscribed for the shares and took up 136 million, $41 million. The total issue performance is 107%. Let's move on to Kenya. Excluding government of Kenya related activities, 2017 real GDP expanded by just 2.9%, says George Bodo. If you stripped out agriculture, it was at a standstill. Kenya Railways is raising cargo fees on the SGR by 80% in a bid to ease the taxpayers' burden of paying the Chinese firm that manages the new railway. The promotional freight tariff will come to an end on the 31st of December, and thereafter the new tariff book rate will become effective from January the 1st, Kenya Railways said in a notice. Kenya Power released full year results, much anticipated. Let me talk through them. Full year revenue actually rose 4.06% to 125.85 billion. Total operating income was 8.67 billion versus 8.13 billion. Transmission and distribution costs were up sharply, 39.628 billion from 34.745 billion. Operating profit was 10.796 billion versus 13.65 billion last time. Finance costs were higher, 7.8 billion versus 6.04 billion. Profit before tax was down 59.65%. Profit after tax down 63.674%. EPS just less than a shilling, 98 cents, down 63.83%. They skipped the dividend. And cash equivalents at the end of the year, negative 7.6 billion versus negative 1.15 billion. Electricity sales grew 2.3%, expanded customer base, improved average yield led to a 3.8% increase in sales revenue. But essentially, these were slightly better than I expected. Cash and cash equivalents position, however, remains a concern. Standard Chartered reported 9-month profit rose to 6.3 billion shillings, rose by a third on higher revenue from government securities, fees and commissions, and a fall in provision for bad loans. The share price data is linked on the website. EPS, price earnings ratio is 9.5. they were ahead of the curve. They took the hits up front, so that's why you see this benefit. Shilling stable at 102.47. Nairobi All Share down 15.77% this year. NSE 20 down 25.16% year to date. I wish you a fantastic